The first time Lynn heard a voice that wasn't her own, it came through static, not words. Not at first. Just a pattern like someone breathing on the other side of a wall too thick for hands to reach. Through, she pressed her fingers against the glass dome overhead. The pocket dimension shimmered blue like always, its horizon looping endlessly, a sky of imitation stars, and a sun that never truly moved. "Oren," she whispered. "Was that you?" The robot's torso creaked as it turned its head. Most of its plating had fallen off years ago. Vines had begun growing out of its open abdomen, curling around exposed wires. "Negative," Oren said in a voice filled with failing circuits. "No signal detected." Perhaps it was another dream. Lynn frowned. Maybe. It was always maybe. For 312 years, though, she only knew that because Oren's internal clock hadn't failed. Yet she'd existed inside the pocket, a self-contained fold in spacetime, designed as a rescue haven for endangered humans during the collapse. Except nobody came back to wake her. Not the scientists, not the soldiers, not the boy who had promised to meet her after just a few weeks. Just a few weeks, she muttered bitterly. Her breath fogged the glass. Oren looked at her, or tried to. One optic flickered and died. Perhaps today will be different. It was. At exactly the same moment, Lynn finished brushing her hair with the worn-down comb. A sound cracked through the air. Not like the static. This was something real. A rip. She stood. The chamber's protective dome darkened in alarm, but it was too slow to hide it. A tear in the air itself. A shimmering vertical wound like someone had sliced the sky with a blade of silver fire. A figure stepped through, then another. Both looked vaguely human. Not quite. Their proportions were off, too tall, too angular, and they wore suits that seemed made of light and wind. "A residual?" one asked. "No," said the other. "She's conscious, awake. We should leave. This bubble's destabilizing." "Wait," Lynn called out. They froze. Don't leave," she said. "Take me with you." The taller one turned. His face was covered in a smooth mask. His voice was unreadable. "Do you know how long you've been here?" Lynn hesitated. "Oren says 312 years. The other one whistled, low and soft. "We were told this place had long collapsed." "How is she alive?" "Doesn't matter," said the first. "If we pull her out, I wanted to go." Lynn interrupted. "Please, I don't want to be forgotten anymore." They took her. The pain hit her like thunder. The moment she stepped through the rift, every cell screamed. It was like waking from a dream and falling straight into a nightmare of cold light and too many timelines fighting for control. They dropped her off at an outpost, told her someone else would explain everything, that she shouldn't be alive, that she should not speak to anyone about where she came from. And then they left her alone. Again. Her room was clean and white and smelled like antiseptic. A soft screen. On one wall looped footage of a golden city floating above a sea of clouds. Lynn hated it. It didn't look real. None of it did. Her chest hurt. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She tried to sleep, but her dreams were louder now. Memories that didn't belong to her. Faces of people she never met. A kiss under stars that had never shone. A boy with silver eyes telling her, "You'll come back and ruin everything, but I'll love you anyway." She screamed into the pillow. On the third day, someone knocked. The door slid open to reveal a boy no older than her, with half-tied braids and freckles scattered across his cheeks like stardust. He smiled. You're Lynn, right?" She blinked. "Yes." He grinned wider, holding up a tray of food. "They said you don't eat much. I figured you might want something that's not synthetic soup." Lynn stared. "Why do you care?" He sat down beside her bed. "I don't know," he admitted. "I just felt like you needed someone to care." "Weird, huh?" Lynn's voice cracked. "What's your name?" 10. He said, short for something no one remembers. "I don't think I'm supposed to talk to anyone." "Good," he said. "Neither am I." 10 came back the next day. And the next. He brought stories. Sometimes they were true about space stations falling in love with rogue comets, or singers who bent time with their voices. Sometimes they weren't. He made her laugh. When she finally smiled, it felt like a revolution. A week passed before Lynn realized something was wrong. Everywhere she walked, people stared just a second too long. Whispers followed her in corridors. One woman bumped into her in the stairwell. hissed something in a language Lynn didn't recognize, and ran off. "What's going on?" she asked 10. He looked hesitant. "You're sort of impossible." He said, "What?" "You're not in the archive, not in any timeline. You're a void, like someone erased you from history and then forgot to finish the job." Lynn felt her stomach drop. "But I'm here, yeah," he whispered. "That's the scary part." That night, she kissed him. It wasn't planned. She wasn't even sure she liked him that way until he started rambling about how galaxies used to dance in pairs and how lonely the universe must be now. So she reached out and kissed him, and time broke. The outpost lights flickered. Alarms blared. Time loops collapsed. Across sectors, people who had forgotten Lynn now remembered. Not all of them remembered her kindly. Some screamed her name. Some begged her to finish what she started. Some just wept. Lynn pulled away from 10's lips. "What's happening?" 10 stared at her, his pupils wide. You're the keystone." "What does that mean?" "You were never supposed to be rescued." "But you were. And now history's rewriting itself around you." She shook her head. "I didn't ask for this. You kissed me," he said, wonderingly, "and everything changed. I don't even know who I am. Maybe we'll figure it out," 10 said. "Together." Lynn didn't respond right away, but when she finally reached for his hand, time didn't scream. Instead, it sighed softly. Nero's days began with silence. Not the peaceful kind. Not the silence of stars or the hush between breaths. This silence had weight, like history holding its breath, waiting for someone to notice it had gone missing. His library floated above a fractured moon in orbit around the ghost planet Lyrael, cataloging everything that time remembered and a few things it tried to forget. He was the only living soul there. Nero didn't mind. He had his archives, his morning tea, and his habit of whispering to the shelves like they were old friends. "Good morning, Cycle 9B, he murmured, brushing dust from a row of glimmering crystals. Each contained a living moment, a perfect replica of a second stolen from a million lifetimes. He placed one into the projector. Light flickered. A child laughed. Birds wheeled across a sky lost to a collapsed timeline. And yet, beneath it all, Nero felt it. A gap, like something had been erased, not just from history but from reality itself. He found the name by accident, or maybe it found him. It was buried in a corrupted footnote, written in shaky script across a shattered dataslate found on a wrecked ship drifting near a time hole. Lynn was never supposed to wake, just that. No metadata, no reference point, no identity profile in the archive. Nero stared at the sentence for a long time. Then he whispered the name aloud. And the library shuddered. When Nero woke the next morning, the main corridor had reconfigured. His shelves, stable for decades, were rearranged. Timelines had rewritten themselves overnight. Memory crystals bore new names. Lynn's single quotes us name. Not everywhere, just in the smallest places. A wedding photo from a future that no longer existed. A battlefield memory where someone shouted for Lynn before vanishing in a burst of unlight. A child's dream sealed in crystal showing a girl who stood under a bleeding sky, holding the hands of people history no longer listed as born. Nero knew what this meant. A keystone, someone who had been removed from time, but who now was returning. And if the weave of time was warping like this, others would notice soon. People with less gentle intentions. He submitted a request to the Central Observatory. Flagged urgent. That was his first mistake. The second was opening the door when someone knocked. KSIA wasn't what Nero expected. He assumed the observatory would send a technician, a logic clerk, maybe a time field recalibration specialist. Instead, they sent a girl in ripped sleeves, combat boots, and eyes that looked like they had cried across entire centuries. "You're the archivist?" she asked, stepping inside before he invited her. "Nero," he said. "And you're Kasia," she said. "I used to exist. Now I don't. That's why I'm here." Nero blinked. "You're a dislocated." Kasia smirked. "Oh, archivist. I'm far worse than that." They sat across a flickering hologlobe showing the time lattice of current space. "You noticed the Lynn effect?" Kasia said. Nero nodded. "It started 3 days ago. She kissed someone." Kasia muttered. Nero blinked. "Pardon?" "She kissed a boy," Kasia said. and it triggered a paradox surge, a paradox surge. Nero repeated, half in disbelief. Romance is dangerous, Kezia said dryly, especially when it's sincere. She explained everything about the pocket dimension, about Lynn's accidental rescue, about the kiss that triggered ripple waves now rewriting entire subhistories of the galactic weave. Nero listened, and for the first time in many years, he felt more than curiosity. He felt afraid. Why send you? He asked finally. Kezia looked away. Because I remember her, she said quietly. Before the deletion. Nero inhaled. You're from the pre-vanishing. Barely, Kezia whispered. My timeline collapsed. Most of it, gone. I shouldn't remember her. But I do. What do you remember? He asked. Kezia's eyes met his. I remember wanting to protect her. They spent the night in the map room, searching the shifting streams of causality, watching timelines branch and fade. Everywhere Lynn's name appeared, a fork began. Civilizations that had never risen. Wars that never started. Peace treaties formed over cups of tea that should never have existed. Lynn didn't cause destruction. She caused possibility that made her dangerous. Because the universe, especially those who governed its structure, hated WILDCARDS. At dawn, Kezia stood by the observatory window. Her back was to Nero, but he knew she hadn't slept. Neither had he. Do you think she's dangerous? He asked quietly. Kezia didn't answer at first. Then she said, I think she's beautiful, and I think the people who erased her once are going to try again. Nero hesitated. Then we stopped them? Kezia turned. Are you sure you're that brave? Nero held her gaze. Maybe not, but I think you are. Kezia smiled. It was a small thing, but it felt important. They traced the distortion to a world on the fringe. Orinshaw, a biomechanoid habitat shaped like a lotus in bloom. A ripple wave passed through it last night. Entire memories rewritten. Two lovers who had never met now ran a bakery in Sector 4. A war memorial had turned into a sculpture of a girl sitting quietly under a tree. Lynn again. Always Lynn. If we don't find her soon, Kezia murmured, someone else will. Nero had never traveled before. Not outside the library. Not since the collapse. He hated spaceports. He hated crowds. He hated feeling unimportant. But when Kezia took his hand to guide him through the checkpoint, he didn't let go. He didn't want to. On the ship, Kezia leaned against the window. I'm sorry you got pulled into this, she said. Nero looked at her. I'm not. She turned toward him. He added, quietly, you remember Lynn, but I remember you. Kezia blinked. What? Nero smiled. You came to the library once, before the timelines folded. You asked about forgotten queens and shattered futures. Your voice was different, but your eyes. He reached toward her cheek. They haven't changed. Kezia swallowed. That wasn't supposed to happen. Neither was Lynn. Nero said gently. Kezia looked away. I don't know what to do with this. Then let's find out together. When the ship arrived at Orinshaw, the distortions were already worse. Gravity anomalies, memory loops, history bleeding into art installations. Nero and Kezia ran through the glowing corridors, following threads only they could feel. Her memories, his records. At the center of the bloom, a tree stood. One that hadn't existed yesterday. Under it, a bench. On the bench, a girl. With wide eyes, and a boy beside her holding her hand like he'd never let go. Nero stopped breathing. That's her, Kezia whispered. Lynn. But before they could move forward, before they could reach her, the sky cracked, and something stepped through. A tall figure, cloaked in white, masked like a mourning god. The timeline enforcers. They had come to erase her again. Kezia ran. Nero shouted. Lynn looked up. And history once more held its breath. The petals drifted through the air like secrets. 10 woke to their touch, cool against his cheeks. The scent of something half remembered. A garden that didn't exist. A kiss never given. A girl who smiled at him once across a sunset and disappeared. Between heartbeats, he sat up in the shelter. Lynn wasn't beside him. That happened often now. Since the enforcer vanished in flowers, she had been quieter, sadder, maybe. The world they'd found refuge in, Orange's outer bloom district, was still blooming in ways it shouldn't. Time wasn't behaving properly. Gravity was softer in the mornings. Colors shifted depending on your thoughts. Some memories rewound if you said a particular word to loud. But for a moment, it felt like they could breathe. He found her sitting beneath the tree again, the one that grew after she broke the enforcer. Lynn had made a habit of returning to it every dawn. 10 stood behind her for a while before speaking. You're still trying to remember something, aren't you? She didn't look at him. I don't know if I'm trying to remember, she said, or just hoping that something remembers me. He sat beside her. The petals brushed their hair. Do you dream? He asked. Lynn nodded. Of people I've never met, places I've never been, but they feel like home. And the boy in those dreams? He asked gently. Her eyes met his. You, she whispered. Later that day, they helped fix the bloom vents. An elderly mechanic named Zarin let them stay rent-free in the district if they helped keep the petals from choking the ducks. 10 liked the work. It reminded him of being useful, of holding a spanner instead of holding memories he didn't understand. Lynn liked the sound the petals made in the turbines, like sighs caught in wind chimes. When she laughed, 10 forgot the shape of the sky. When she touched his shoulder, the whole world paused. That night, they returned to their small, shared room. Lynn curled up by the window. 10 sat on the floor beside her. Outside, the tree glowed faintly. They'll come for me again. Lynn said, I know. They'll erase me. No, 10 said. I'll hold on. Her voice cracked. What if I'm not worth holding? You are, he said, reaching for her hand. Even if I forget, some part of me will remember. He didn't say it, but he wanted to. That he loved her, even if the galaxy did in single quotes far away. Nero and Kasia argued in a library that refused to be. Still, time's folding faster, Kasia said. The Archivist Guild is collapsing entire branches of history. She's destabilizing the weave. She's not destabilizing anything, Nero snapped. She's healing it. They just don't like the shape it takes when she touches it. If she keeps changing things, she isn't changing them, Nero said. She's restoring what was lost. The girl was a fixed point. They tried to erase a heart out of the universe and now wonder why everything feels cold. Kasia stared at him. Then we protect her, she said quietly. Back in Orangeshah, 10 woke screaming. Lynn was already shaking him when he sat up, soaked in sweat, heart pounding. What did you see? She asked. He gripped her arms. You were gone, not dead, not erased, just unremembered. Everyone looked through me when I said your name. I screamed it, Lynn. I'm here, she said, pulling him into her arms. I'm here. He wept into her shoulder. After a while, he whispered, if I forget you, will you find me again? Lynn kissed his forehead. Always. The next day, a child from the district found a flower with a voice. She picked it and it whispered, Lynn. Her mother took it and it said, 10. By the end of the afternoon, petals were falling with names, thousands of them, each carried a memory. People began to gather near the tree. Someone played a stringed instrument. Someone wept. No one knew why. Lynn sat on the bench beside 10, watching. There, remembering me, she said softly. They never knew you. He reminded her. She smiled sadly. But the petals do. In orbit above Orangeshah, a ship cracked into real space. It was made of metal older than language. Crewless, silent, designed by a god who feared rebellion. Inside, the second enforcer awoke. It had no face. No hands. Just hunger. And the instruction to remove the flower at the center of the fracture. That night, 10 had another dream. He was standing in a cathedral made of petals. Every window showed a different version of Lynn, laughing, running, dying, vanishing. At the far end, a throne stood. Empty. He walked toward it. A voice whispered from the shadows, if you love her, would you forget her, to save her? He didn't answer. He just kept walking. He woke with one word in his mouth. Don't. Lynn was already awake, watching the stars. I felt something, she said. So did I. He replied. We're running out of time. They walked the district that morning. People smiled. A child handed Lynn a drawing of her, with petals in her hair. 10 felt like they were living someone else's memory. To perfect, to fragile. He turned to Lynn as they reached the edge of the bloom. Let's leave. She blinked. What? Now. We go. We take a ship. We don't wait for the next enforcer. We don't fight them. We just go. She looked out over the petals. Where? Anywhere. She hesitated. Okay, she said, and for a moment, the world held its breath. They didn't make it to the port. The sky tore open before they reached the first checkpoint. Everyone in the Bloom district turned to look up. The second enforcer descended without wings, without warning, without mercy. It erased memories as it passed. A woman forgot her son. A vendor forgot her recipes. A teacher forgot the alphabet. Petals turned gray. The air felt cold. Lynn grabbed Ten's hand and ran. But Ten was already forgetting the way. He stumbled. Names slipped through his mind like water through cloth. She turned to him. Ten. He blinked. I know you, I think. Stay with me, she said. I'm trying. He fell to his knees. She screamed as the enforcer approached. Suddenly, Kasia dropped from the rooftop. Guns made of broken timelines drawn. Nero wasn't far behind. Holding a device glowing with colors language had never named, they fired together. The enforcer stumbled. Lynn dragged Ten toward them. We have to reset the narrative, Nero shouted. Before it unravels, I can't remember the script. Ten gasped, then write a new one. Kasia shouted. Lynn turned to him. Ten, she said. He looked up. His name. It brought everything back. The kiss. The petals. The promise. I remember. He whispered. And then he kissed her. The enforcer screamed. Not in pain. In confusion. Because love had no syntax in its program. And the boy who dreamed of flowers remembered her name. Everything bloomed. The tree lit up. The petals became stars. The enforcer shattered into mist. The district wept as memory rushed back. People hugged strangers. Stories returned. Children laughed. And Ten held Lynn close. I won't forget again, he said. You might, she said, but love will remember for you, far away. In a garden that hadn't existed until today, a flower opened. Inside it, a story was written. Once, a boy dreamed of a girl who bloomed like spring in the heart of a dying galaxy. He held her hand and never let go, even when time did. The war didn't begin with a siren. It began with forgetfulness. Someone forgot the name of the valley where Lynn and Ten had first kissed. A child, born the night after, grew without a shadow. The petals that once bloomed with memory now drifted. Like ash, they're rewriting us again. Kasia stood at the edge of the root archive, watching the sun unmake itself and become a crescent of pale memory. Her voice was tight. They're not even hiding it this time. Nero adjusted the weave. Stabilizer embedded in the ground. They're not rewriting. They're erasing. Is that better? No. It's more honest. Lynn didn't answer. She was seated with Ten beneath the same flowering tree where he had once forgotten her. Now he remembered. Every version, every kiss, and yet he was still afraid. Because love could defy memory, but it could not defy deletion. Solon arrived during the second forgetting. His ship bled ink as it landed, trailing shredded timelines like bandages. He wore a coat sewn from stories that had been excised from the archives. Don't shoot, he said as Kasia raised her weapon. I'm not here to rewrite you. She didn't lower it. I used to be an archivist, he said. Now I'm a deserter. You'll need a better reason than regret, Nero replied flatly. I brought something, Solon said. Not data, not proof, but resonance. He held out a flower. It was made of spoken names. One of them was Lynn. In the root vault, where emotion was stored like currency. Lynn placed her hand on a slab of soft moss that contained Ten's first laughter. She whispered, Why do they hate what remembers? Solon stood beside her. Because to remember is to resist. She glanced at him. So love is resistance. No, love is infection. Solon said softly. It spreads across timelines. It grows in the cracks of silence. It makes deletion impossible. Ten joined them. He looked at Solon. Are you going to help us stop them? Solon smiled bitterly. I already tried. They erased my name from the archivist registry. I'm no longer a person. I'm just an echo. Then, maybe you belong with us, Lynn said gently. We're all echoes now. That night, they dreamed of birds. Birds made of phrases. Birds whose feathers carried forgotten wedding vows and lullabies and bedtime stories. One landed on Lynn's shoulder and whispered a single sentence. She woke crying. 10 held her close. What did it say? She buried her face into his chest. It said I was real. The first wave of the war came in silence. Entire cities were emptied. Not by death, but by deletion. No rubble. No bodies. Just absence. The smell of loss. 10 walked through one such place, a city where they'd once taken refuge for a week, and found his own handwriting etched into a wall. Lynn was here. But the wall was crumbling. Reality frayed around the letters. He ran his fingers over the cracks. I remember you, he whispered, and something in the air paused. They made their stand in the Valley of Breath, a place where time folded naturally, where memory settled like pollen on every surface. Ksia called it the holdfast. There, they began to build something new, not a weapon, not a fortress, a garden. It started with petals gathered from 1,000 timelines. They planted them into soil made from archived sorrow. Solon called the project the root. Not a library, not a vault, a living memory system. Every flower grew from a kiss, every stem from a whispered name, every leaf from grief that had been shared. 10 and Lynn spent days feeding the garden stories. He told her of the time he saw her smile through a snowfall of blue dust. She told him of the dream where he was a poem written in heartbeat rhythm. They watered the garden with tears. It grew faster than expected. It began to speak. The enforcers came again, but they had changed. Less humanoid now, more like shadows wearing intent. They drifted toward the root with weapons made of negation. One touched a flower, and it vanished. 10 shouted, "They're absorbing the root. They're trying to make us forget feeling," Solon said, eyes wide. "It's worse than erasure. It's sterilization." "Then we need to feel louder," Lynn said. She stepped forward. The enforcers halted. She opened her arms. And sang. It was not a song in the traditional sense. It was every laugh 10 had ever coaxed from her. Every gasp shared between kisses. Every moan in the dark that said I love you better than words. The garden echoed it. The petals vibrated. And the enforcers stumbled. Some disintegrated on contact with the sound. Others retreated, flickering in and out of phase. One reached for her, and 10 stepped in its path. "I'm not afraid," he said. The enforcer shivered. "I forget things. I lose names. I mess up the order of events. But I remember her." His voice cracked. "I always remember her." The enforcer hesitated, then collapsed into stardust. The war didn't end, but the archivists began to fracture. The great control systems that managed deletion lost clarity. The root had started leaking into nearby systems. A traitor who'd never met. Lynn dreamed of her. A child in a dead sector said her name and began to weep without knowing why. Stories grew where there had only been silence. Kasia looked at the sky one morning. "I think we're winning." "No," Solon said. "We're surviving. Winning implies we'll be left alone. They'll come again. Then we make the garden grow bigger than they can erase." Lynn stood beneath a tree made of memories she didn't write. It bore fruit shaped like promises. 10 joined her. "Do you ever wonder what we were before all this?" he asked. She smiled. "I think we were lovers in every version of history, even the ones that didn't make it." He held her hand. "And in the next version?" She leaned her head against his shoulder. "We'll be lovers there too." In a broken timeline, an archivist scanned a flower from the holdfast and paused. His memory stuttered. He blinked. Then whispered, "Lynn," and cried, because he didn't know why. In orbit, a massive archive core went dark. Too many inputs. Too many contradictory records. Lynn was being remembered too often. Too deeply. They could no longer extract her cleanly. She was in every love letter, every dream, every moment someone forgot what pain was. Back in the valley, the garden had grown. So large it changed the gravitational field. Birds migrated there instinctively. Children called it the remembering place. And 10 kissed Lynn every night before sleep. "You know they'll try again," he said once. "I know," she said, "and next time, I might be the one who forgets you first." She placed a hand over his heart. "Then I'll just fall in love with you again." She didn't mean to erase the stars. It began with a kiss, not dramatic, not trembling with fate. Just a kiss while stirring soup. 10 leaned in, his breath warm on her cheek, and Lynn tilted her face out of habit. Their lips brushed, and somewhere, light folded in on itself. A constellation blinked out. Solon noticed first. He sat in the Roots watchtower, sipping tea made of dried remembrance blossoms. The sky glitched, briefly like a skipped beat in an ancient song. Kasia, he called. Over the communicator. I think we just lost Theta 3 Centauri. Lost? You mean the relay? I mean the star. Lynn stood in the garden, staring at a flower that hadn't existed yesterday. It grew from the soil of shared memory, but it pulsed, not like memory, not like love. It pulsed like power. Nero approached from behind, his voice quiet. The garden is becoming recursive. It's rewriting the sky. How? Your presence in the weave. It's too dense, too emotionally entangled. You're cross-pollinating timelines. I don't understand. You're loved in too many futures. They tried to contain it. To trim the garden, to quiet the blooming. They asked Lynn to sleep farther from the archive roots. But when she laughed, a supernova reversed itself. When she cried, a moon collapsed inward and birthed a second version of its own history. You're no longer a person. Solon told her one evening, gently, you're a variable. She didn't flinch. What kind of variable? The kind that breaks equations. They gave her options. Option 1, leave the garden. Let it forget you. Let us forget you. Option 2, submit to memory dampening. Sever your links to 10. Option 3, bury yourself in the fold between timelines. Go still. Be myth. She asked 10 what he wanted. He said, only you, in any version. So she chose option 3, but not the way they expected. She went into the heart of the root. Past the petals that sang, past the stalks of yesterday, past the dreams that others had tried to bury, and she had unknowingly revived. She found the mirror at the center. It was made of all the versions of herself that never got to love out loud. She stepped through it. 10 followed her, of course. He always did, late, breathless, determined. Inside the mirror, time warped around them. They saw themselves over and over. A dozen Lynn and 10 combinations. In one, she was a singer, and he a mute traveler. In another, she was a dying oracle, and he, the man who forgot every day. Each one ended in tragedy, or poetry, or quiet fading. Each one ended, except one, the one they were in. I don't want to destroy the stars, Lynn whispered. Then don't, 10 replied. But I don't know how to stop. I think I've become love itself. You always were, he said, brushing a strand of her hair behind her ear. The archivists came not as soldiers, not as agents. They came as static, as breath held too long, as white space between notes. You are unindexed, they whispered. You break all retrieval paths. I am not an error, Lynn said. No, they conceded. You are feeling, and we were not made to store you. Then don't store me, she said. Let me go. She kissed 10 one more time. Not a goodbye, just a tether. And then she walked into the center of the fracture and rewrote one thing. Not history. Not memory. Just a single line in the language that governed creation. Let love remain, even if the names are forgotten. The sky didn't go dark. It went quiet. The stars that vanished didn't scream. They hummed gently into new forms. Some became oceans on far planets. Some became chords and lullabies sung by alien mothers to starlit cribs. Some became the pause before saying I love you. None were lost. They were transformed. The root closed, not dead, not ruined, just full. It had grown enough. It had bloomed all the stories it needed. The flowers folded in. The air settled. Kasia wept, quietly, without knowing why. Nero carved Lynn's name into the stone at the edge of the garden. Solon recorded nothing, because it was beyond record. It was beyond archive. And 10, he walked planet to planet, telling stories that had no words, just smiles and touches, and the knowing look of someone who had loved the most dangerous girl in the galaxy, and still did. Sometimes when a child dreams too deeply, or a lover kisses, without permission from logic, a star blinks in and out. Some say it's a glitch in the sky, but some, those who remember, just barely whisper a name. Lynn, and they don't know why they cry when they say it, but they always do.